can fly.
Hello everyone, Johnny here. Hope everyone is having a great time. Hope everyone is staying nice and healthy. Today's video, I've been inspired by one of my favorite dietitians, Alicia Edge, and her team at Compete Performance on their most recent post about am I eating enough, and covering a concept known as relative energy deficiency in sports, or REDS in the short term. They asked, for example, the basic question of am I eating enough, and some of those symptoms that do occur when you're having REDS, or relative energy deficiency in sport. But I think this question, am I eating enough, doesn't just relate to sport, it also relates to context outside of sport too, like whether you're going to work, do you have enough energy to go throughout the day, or have enough energy to maintain your weight, or losing weight, for example, are you eating enough? There isn't, I guess, one hard and fast rule of knowing are you eating enough. You know, there's many ways, such as listening to your hunger and fullness cues, or we dietitians like to call it satiety. It's just a fancy word for fullness. Anyway, yeah, hunger and your fullness cues, listening to when your body is hungry, listening to when it's full and to stop eating, for example. Some people like to track their calories to know how much calories I need to maintain my weight, or how many calories I need to lose weight. Following macros, for example. There's so many ways, for example, of how to go about knowing if you're eating enough. But I think the most important thing, though, is noticing or identifying when you aren't eating enough. And so that's what some of the Compete Performance post was talking about, was some of those symptoms that athletes particularly might find in that sporting context, about when you have low energy availability, or otherwise when you don't have enough energy to support fueling everything you're doing throughout the day. So REDS, or relative energy deficiency, actually, for a bit of background, it used to actually be called the female athlete triad, because there were three main things that researchers discovered that happened when females particularly when they had low energy availability, and those were eating disorders, amenorrhea, or a cease in their menstrual cycle, and osteoporosis, or low bone mineral density. But this then got changed at around, I think, 2018-ish, and the name changed to become REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport, because it wasn't just females that can experience those symptoms, it's also males as well. So some of those symptoms, as Compete Performance described, include, for example, one is their performance in training or gym is declining. They're dropping in terms of their performance. It actually reminds me of Constantine, the Sidemen's cameraman. He mentioned that, he went into a very steep calorie deficit to lose weight for the Sidemen charity match, which was great. It was a really great achievement that Con had made, and I was really happy for him too. But he did mention in another video later that he did say, my calorie deficit was very steep, I was losing muscle tone, and it was really hard for me to push myself in the gym too. Which is very true as well. If you go too far in the calorie deficit, you will not just lose your fat, you'll also lose your muscle tone too. And it can feel a lot harder, to then perform. Some other symptoms they described in that post, which I'll link in the description below as well, is that their mood is low, they're feeling more irritable, it's harder to concentrate or focus or make decisions, they're feeling more fatigued, flat, and it's harder to recover. Especially that point, when it's saying it's harder to make decisions. That is so important, whether it's in sport or outside of sport too. You think, for example, in football, to make decisions, do I run, do I not run, sprint, not sprint, do I put in my tackle, do I go for the foul, do I pass to my keeper, do I pass to my centre back, do I do a long ball, do we keep it short or something, do I make a substitution? Those decisions to make as well are so important as well. But in order to make those decisions, you need to make sure you're fueled well too, that you've got enough fuel at the time being, as well as having enough energy throughout the day. Now I might just also point out as well, it's not instantaneous. It's not something that didn't have enough energy today, tomorrow I get reds. No, it's something that happens over a prolonged period of time when you're not fueling yourself well enough, when you're not recovering well enough and all of that sort of thing, and you're not getting in enough fuel or hydration, your nutrients and everything your body needs and that sort of thing, then you might start to feel in the sporting setting these sort of symptoms that was described in that post. You know, one of the other things they said was bone stress injuries. So when you have low energy availability, there is some research that shows, for example, that you start to produce more chemicals that promote bone breakdown and less of those chemicals that help to promote bone formation, to build your bones. That can be quite dangerous as well. It can lead you, to more injuries, for example. You don't want to be injured as well. You want to play your sport. You're not playing your sport to get injured. Anyway, there's other things such as disrupted sex hormones, things such as pause or no menstrual cycles, or reduced sex drive, for example. You might experience persistent gut upset, such as very painful bloating, changes in your bowel motions, the consistency, the smell, the type of stool, for example. But be mindful as well, again, it might not be you have low energy availability, therefore you're having persistent gut upset. It might be different things as well. But just noticing and telling yourself, identifying yourself if you're not eating enough and knowing when you're not really eating enough, these might be some of the things in a sporting context as well as to some of the symptoms when you may not be eating enough and you have very low energy. One of the other things, and I love this one as well, is difficulty sleeping. Sleep is so important. It's just as important as nutrition as well. It's not one or the other. Both nutrition and sleep are important. Sleep has so many benefits to it that it helps you with your recovery, helps you maintain your muscle as well. If you want to lose weight, for example, sleep is important too. It's not just about focusing on your nutrition and not focusing so much on your sleep too. Sleep is so important for recovery. Anyway, those are some of the things that post was saying with regards to, in the context of sport, when you have low energy availability, i.e. not having enough energy to support everything you're doing during the day, for a prolonged period of time, these are what some of the symptoms you might be experiencing too. Pulling back away from sports, let's just say, what if I'm not an athlete and I'm just, I just need to know if I'm eating enough during the day? It's a great question as well. I think if you're not eating enough, you might feel at the very end of the day super run down, easier to get sick. There has been research, for example, in the sporting context, is that when people are underfueled, there is more susceptibility or easier to get respiratory infections, for example, or just even simply getting sick. So are you eating enough? During the day, if you're not eating enough, you're going back home feeling super burnt out, run down, fatigued. Over a prolonged period of time, you might feel it's easier for you to get burnt out, for example, really tired, or even coming into work super tired. Mind you as well, just remember as well, nutrition isn't also a hard and fast rule as to explain everything you're feeling. You might wake up already feeling tired going into work because you may not already have a good enough sleep beforehand too. But I'm saying nutrition is just one of those factors that might be contributing to, you feeling a bit more run down, feeling a bit more burnt out. And so asking yourself that question, are you eating enough, is quite important too. So I guess to fill in that gap, are you eating enough? One of the most important news to help fuel ourselves is carbohydrates or carbs. So carbs are, for example, your pastas, rice, noodles, breads, all those starchy foods, those sort of things. When we eat carbs, they break down into sugars and then they go into our bloodstream. And then once they're in the blood, they'll then go to where you need it most. So if you're studying or in a classroom, for example, they might go to your brain. If you're playing football, doing some sort of exercise, running, for example, they might go to your muscles. That's why as well, if after you finish eating and then you go straight for a run or a HIIT workout or something, you might feel you get a stitch or really bloated because all the blood and all your energy is going to your guts to help digest the food, and now you're going straight away for a run, so now all the food gets stuck there. Press pause on that and then go straight to the muscle, like everything's sitting there in your stomach. So yeah, carbs are important. That is one of those important nutrients to help you fuel. But remember, it's not just one nutrient. Are you eating from all the 5 core food groups as well, mate? Like protein, veggies, fruits, healthy fats, and all of that stuff. They all work well together to help you fuel too. So carbs aren't just a nutrient to help you fuel, but I'll go into like some other videos as well about how to fuel for games, for example, and that all that sort of thing. But yeah, when you are just, you know, going to work, trying to just go about your day, coming back home, are you eating enough is one of those important questions to ask yourself too. So then you know you don't feel so run down afterwards, you don't get as sick easier, that sort of thing. Alright guys, I think that's enough for today's video, covering things about are you eating enough and breads. I'll link that post in the description down below. I hope everyone had a good time today, and I'll see you again in the next video.